Okay, we're going to resume the Gemara. We'll go from the beginning of the Gemara again. One idea I had, because there's a couple of extra makoros that I was thinking would be useful to have shared in advance, just because I'm going to refer to a couple of Rishonim today. So maybe the easiest way of doing it, because some are on Zoom and some here, so to print out copies is not going to help. It's not going to help everyone, but maybe we'll do like one of these broadcast-only WhatsApp groups. Then if I want to share something in advance, as like a piece of Ramban or whatever, I can just send it on the group and then everyone can follow along on their phones or on their screens or whatever. I think that's probably the easiest thing. Maybe I'll get Johnny to help with that. Should be straightforward. Okay, so so we did the Mishnah last time we started the Gemara. So we as we sort of like introduced last week, the main focus of the whole of the first sugya is the concept of hezek re'iyah, whether it's considered to be a substantive damage claim, or you can argue that someone is not allowed to cause you hezek re'iyah, damage through the fact that they can literally see into your property. So what we're going to try and do today is firstly go through the Gemara, but also try and get to grips with understanding exactly what this concept is, this concept of causing damage without doing anything effectively, without doing anything physical. What exactly is hezek re'iyah? And understanding that is obviously critical for understanding the whole of the first sugya and beyond. So once again, let's go over the Gemara quickly. Gemara says, Savrua, my mechitza guda. So we said in the Mishnah, the shutfin shutfin who want to, which we understand here as neighbors, in the sense they've got a courtyard that between them in partnership, in the sense that they share this shared space. The Mishnah said that if they want to make a mechitza in the chotzer, then they build a wall down the middle. So the Gemara says, "Savrua my mechitza guda." We think that what is a mechitza? A mechitza is a guda, is a wall. And the Gemara then brings a proof from a brisa. In the brisa, we see in the brisa that the word mechitza can mean a wall, because the brisa says mechitza sakarem shenifritza. You have the wall of a vineyard that was broken through. Omelo gedor. You say to him, build the wall up again. That means to say the person who's got these crops or whatever on the other side, he can say to the person who is owning the vineyard, whose vines are causing his crops to become osir through Kilai HaKerem, once the wall isn't there. He legitimately planted right up to the wall whilst the wall was there. But once the wall is gone, that's what's going to happen. They're going to grow across. He can say to him, Omelo Gedar, he can say to him, I need you to build up your wall so that your vines don't make my crops osir. Chosr, and if it falls down again, Omelo Gedar, he can again tell him to rebuild it. And if he doesn't do it, he doesn't bother, and he doesn't rebuild the wall, hareza kidesh, what happens is it makes the tvua osir, it makes the crops forbidden because of the halacha of klai kerem, and he's chayav b'achrayas. He has to pay, in other words, for the damage that is caused. Now we only bring this brisa, very important not to get too sidetracked here, because this brisa is simply brought to establish that the word mechitza, the simple understanding, the word mechitza is a wall, as in the wall of the vineyard, which is broken down. Mechitza means a wall. Okay. So the Gemara says, if it's the case that the word mechitza means a wall, then we establish a very important thing from the Mishnah. The Talmud Derotzu. The only reason, the Gemara carries on, the only reason that they are obligated to build the wall is because they want to do so. They want to build the wall because they decide they'd like to build a wall. Therefore, they build the wall and they share the space. It's built in the middle. They have to share the way they construct it, whatever it's done between them as a partnership, right? Because they wanted to do so. If they didn't want to do so, ein mechayev inoso. You're not mechayev him. You cannot be mechayev someone else. You cannot obligate someone else to build the wall. Almost so we see, says the Gemara, hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek. Hezek re'iyah, that means damages that you cause through viewing, being able to see into someone else's property, lav shmei hezek, are not considered to be a substantive damage. And the reason the way we see this from the Mishnah, according to this reading of the Mishnah, is because it's only because they have made a joint decision to build the wall, right? do the consequences follow that this is the way they build the wall according to the Minhag Medina and everything else, only because they made that decision between them. But without making that decision, if they haven't made a joint decision, one of them wants to build and the other one doesn't, yeah? He says, no, I quite like it open plan. I quite like it being able to see more space, even if I know half the chotzer isn't mine, then there's nothing the other guy can do about it. So we see, right, that he can't come along and say, hold on a minute, I do lots of private things in the chotzer. We know in those days the chotzer was basically another room of the house. So I don't want you to see all the private stuff I do. Even so, he's got no claim. He's got no claim against him. No claim against him. Now we have to see the second Rashi again, because this Rashi is the fundamentally important one. The Tama Dorotsu. So it's the second line of Rashi. The Tama Dorotsu livnos kosel. Livnos kosel midas shnehem, the bachatz, right? Midas shnehem, changes it, midas shnehem. But only because they want to build the wall midas shnehem, with both of them agreeing to do so. That's why the Chachomim obligated them to jointly build the wall between them. Now the next line is like in brackets, the next few words, it'll come on Porech. Later on, the Gemara is going to ask, who cares if they want to build the wall? They can change their minds, right? Meaning, what does this say? What does the statement mean? Two people who decide they'd like to build a wall, they build a wall. What do you, what if we change our minds, right? If we want to, if it was our decision in the first place, we can change our minds. So, what's obligating them to stick to that plan? Okay, leave that on the side, then we'll discuss that later. But the key point that we learn from the statement in the Mishnah, because this is the problem that Gemara's had, right? This is the Gemara's problem with that first line in the Mishnah. But what is going on? Two people decide they want to build a wall, go ahead and build a wall. Don't tell me that. Okay, fine, yeah? So what are we learning from it? According to this way of reading the Mishnah, we're learning the following thing, says Rashi. If they didn't both want to, one of them said, one of them says, I'm very happy just splitting with a little picket fence, pieces of wood where you can see through. I'm very comfortable with that. We call that masippus. It's like a very flimsy fence that you can see through with pigs of wood stuck in the ground. We don't force him. And he can't, the other one can't say to him, I don't want you to be able to see what I do, the private things that I do in my property. Okay? Now, that is why does Rashi have to say they want to build that substantial picket fence? So we're going to come back to the Masippus later on, right? We're going to come back to the Gemara. The Gemara will come back to the significance of what this, this little fence is here. I mean, on a simple level, we're assuming, right, that there is agreement between them to build a wall. That's the statement. That's how Rashi talks about building some sort of fence, okay? Because that's what they've decided. Meaning, we can argue the Gemara is later on going to come back to that, or let them change their mind. But Rashi's going with the assumption here that everyone agrees to build the wall, right? The question is, what does the wall have to be made of, okay? If you say that hashutfin sherotzu lasos mechitza doesn't mean partners who decide to divide up a chotzer, it means that partners or neighbors who decide to build a wall, right, who decide to build a wall, then the operative point here is the wall. It's not the division, it's the wall. And it's only because they both want to build a wall, therefore they have to therefore they go along with building a substantive wall, right? Whereas if one of them says, okay, I'm happy to split, but I'm not happy to build a wall, right? Then he can say to the other one, I'm happy just with a basic fence. So what I'm saying is, your question is a fair question. I'm saying Rashi's going with the assumption that everyone here is happy to build a wall, because according to this way of reading the Mishnah, that's what's under discussion, right? What's under discussion is a wall that everyone's agreed to build, right? But the question is, what have they agreed to? Everything goes with what they've agreed to. It's only because they both say we want to build this strong wall which prevents either seeing each other's business that they follow that plan. And one of them says I want it, and says I don't. Then he cannot force him to do so. Now the last line in this Rashi provides us with our first definition of what hezek re'iyah is. Rashi says ve'ein ze yochol lo maloi. He can't say to him eini chofetz shetira asokai. I don't want you to see my private business. Okay, so Rashi, we'll come back to that. I'm just pointing out that's the first time, we've sort of seen a definition of what hezek re'iyah is. Yeah, it doesn't clarify everything because you can still say, well, why is that claimable in law? This idea that you can't see what I'm doing. Why is that? Why am I able to do so? It's a fascinating principle. The whole thing is a fascinating principle.
Does that mean he can't force him to build a wall, or he can't build up a wall without ever purpose?
Yeah, that's exactly what it means. If we say hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek, which is what we're assuming now, okay, that the way you read the Mishnah is only because they both agree to, is there any building of fixed, strong walls that prevent sight, yeah? That tells us that if there's just one of them who wants it, because he doesn't want the other one to see, there is no way he can force the other guy, yeah, to say, I don't want you looking at my property. No, that's not a actionable claim, shall we say, in law, right? Who?
One of the parties always has the right to do it. The question of whether he's having the cost of it.
When you on his own, on his own land, if he wants to build on his own land a fence, right, for sure, but he doesn't want to do that, right? He wants to, you can do what you want in your property. There's another issue which is blocking someone's light, and that's they're going to talk about that later on. Let's leave that aside. Let's assume that's not an issue here. Meaning, if I can build something, potentially if I build something, if I set up a tannery, next paragraph talks about it, I set up a tannery, right? We have a little chotzer between us, and I decide to set up a tannery, right? In the chotzer, that's a problem, yeah? Because I'm causing harm to you. Okay, let's assume he knows no harm. You can build whatever wall you want in your property, but the whole point here is he wants to be mechayev, the other guy, yeah, to build this wall or to jointly, that they should have a joint wall between them, because he says the current situation is not acceptable because you can see what I'm doing. And if you say hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek, it's not that's not considered to be damage, to be damages. That's not actionable damages. Then the other guy can say, so what? So what? So what if I can see your business? Who cares? I don't care. That's not a way. You cannot force me. You cannot force me to build a wall as a result of that alone. What? Yeah, it's your problem. You happen to be a very private person. I don't care. Okay?
The whole idea of privacy and just general,
yeah.
For the Torah to say, actually, halacha to say, you know what? I can't see. If you're uncomfortable with it, you're not comfortable.
So firstly, this is one of the reasons why this sugya is so fascinating, because the whole scenario is unusual anyway. There's this concept of hezek. Usually hezek means a physical, I on my property come into contact with you and there's a result. I smash your car, I do something. That's what hezek is, what damages is, right? So what is damages? Plus, as you say, how can you have a situation where someone can do something which clearly does hurt someone else, right? Because they can, and yet there's nothing he can do about it. This is exactly. So we have to sort of develop the sugya and build it up as the Gemara will do as we go through this. But for now, that last line in Rashi is very important, which we'll come back to, this idea of what exactly is going on here and what is the rationale behind it. But that's what the Gemara is assuming for the moment. The Gemara says like this. So that's the first vision. The Gemara says, who says? Ve'emor, let's say my mechitza plukta. Let's say that the word mechitza doesn't mean a wall, but it means a plugta, which means a division. We agree to divide up. Okay, we agree to divide up. Kedichsiv, the Gemara brings a pasuk again, which clearly, where you see the use of the word in this context, vatahi mechetza so'eda, and it says the half talks about the half of the congregation. Literally, mechtzas means a half. Mechtzas so'eda. So the word mechtzah can mean a division. Let's be honest. When you read the Mishnah like this, it's very difficult. The grammar's not right, the dictum right. The simple translation is the shut and shrotz lasos mechitza. They want to build a wall. What was the Gemara's going to ask? It should say, it should be phrased a different way or whatever. So Tosfos here points out the reason why everywhere else in the Gemara, mechitza is wool, right? But there are lots of questions on that way of understanding the Mishnah. That it means they shutfin who want to build a wall, and that's why we try and force the language to mean partners who want to divide up the chotzer, not that they want to build a wall. Okay, that's what Tosfos says. I'll show you Tosfos very quickly. Mefarish Ri, it's the third Tosfos from third Tosfos says Mefarish Ri, where it says ve'eim or ma'mechitza plugta. Mefarish Ri mishum da aloshen guda yish kama kushas. There's lots of questions on the phrase guda, on the word guda, understanding the Mishnah like that. That's why it kind of stretches it to say that mechitza means a plugta division. Everywhere else, mechitza means a wall. But just here, because we've got lots of problems with that way of learning, that's why we introduce the possibility of mechitza meaning to divide up. Okay, now what big difference does this make if you explain the Mishnah like this? Because now everything changes. The kivon durotsu, since they want to divide up the chotzer, since they've agreed to divide it up, two neighbors who have a shared space and they've agreed to divide it up, right? They build the wall against his will. They can build a wall even if one of them says, I was happy to divide up, but I have no interest in building a thick wall that we can't see through, right? Alma, so we see Hezek Riyah Shmei Hezek. If you read the Mishnah like that, Hezek Riyah Shmei Hezek, right? Causing damage through being able to see into someone else's property is considered to be damages. Right? Because again, we have this problem with that first line. Hashutfin sherotzu lasos mechitza, right? Boinin esakosel. Shutfin, neighbors, whatever, who want to build a wall. They in a chotzer, they build boinin esakosel, they build the wall be'emsa. So we tried to explain it according to the first way of understanding. We said, well, it means that they both agree to build a wall, and therefore they do so. What's the chiddush? The chiddush is, right, that it's only because they agree between them to build the wall, yeah, do they actually have to, can they do so? But if only one of them wants it, the other one doesn't, there's got no claim in law. That's what we explained until now, right? In other words, Hezek Riyah, Lav Shmei Hezek is not, you can't claim just because you don't want him to see you. But if you read the Mishnah, Hashutfin Sherotzu Lasos Mechitza, Shutfin who want to divide up, they've made the decision to divide up. Now the Mishnah means the Chachomim, at this point, once you've agreed to divide up the Chotzer, the Chachomim will impose Boinin Esakosel, yeah, if one of them wants it. Even if the other one says, I agree to divide up, but only a picket fence. Comes on the Chachomim saying, no, Boinin Esakosel. You're going to have to build a wall. Why? Because Hezek Riyah Shmei Hezek. Because one of them, if one of them says, I don't want you seeing into my property, then we can build that, then I can force you to build that wall. That's that, and therefore that will be the chiddush of the Mishnah. Yeah, of course, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, like any form of that, yeah, 100%, of course. Yeah, if there's like any form of damages, it's only damage if, well, it has to be. Okay, that's not true, is it? That's not true. Meaning, if I cause you physical damage, if I break something, right, then well, you could be mochel me, and you could say, yes, it must be something that I'm bothered about. That's the point. Yeah. Well, we will come, as I said, we'll come back to understand exactly what what the damage is. No, that for sure he's going to have to do. He's going to have to build a wall. We'll come back to understand exactly what the damage is. Yeah, that's being caused here by simply seeing into someone else's property, right? As I said, we saw a little bit in Rashi that I don't want you to see what I'm doing privately, whatever that means. Yeah, but leave that aside. Yossi's point is exactly correct in the sense that clearly, when it comes to something where there is no physical damage, it's only if one of them is bothered. If they're both happy, if they're wonderful neighbors, and they prefer having a shared chotzer where they can each see each other's private business, but they they all have friendly and they can do joint barbecues and everything else. Great, then we don't have to. Obviously, the situation is where they want to, one of them wants to have some privacy. So the Gemara says, the Kim of the Rotsu, since they want to, He builds the wall against the will of the other one. Almost so we see Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. The Hezek Re'iyah is considered to be Hezek, right? Now, so let's we'll see Rashi first. We'll see that next Rashi. Go on, yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't no, he doesn't. What do you mean? But he's saying to the other guy, right? They both agree to divide up, and that's relevant because, as we'll see, we're talking about a situation where there has to be agreement. There are situations where there's no need for agreement. If the chotzer is big enough, it's a big enough space that we each have our own space, then there actually doesn't need to be agreement on the division. If the chotzer is a certain size, the Gemara, I think we'll see in Rashi, it's 8 amos each. If there's 8 amos each, probably 8 by 8, whatever it is, 8 amos each in front of their properties, then I don't even need to get your agreement to divide up. They're assuming, the agreement is there because there isn't that amount of space, so we have to get agreement to actually make the division. The purpose of the division is simply that in a situation where we have a shared land, okay, which is not considered to be automatically sufficient for each of us independently, right? Because it's not a massive amount of space. So we both have to agree on the division. We both, once we agree to divide, so then one of them can say to the other one, once you've agreed to make the division, I am insisting that we build a type of wall that means you can't see into my property. If they haven't agreed to divide the property, then there's nothing to talk about because they're obviously happy sharing. So the Hezek Re'iyah doesn't come into question because. So the implication is he doesn't want the other man looking at his property. Why does that make it that automatically? He doesn't want somebody to look at it. Well, no, we are, if according to this way of thinking, right, we are saying that it is a form of damage, for if it bothers me, right, for my neighbor to be able to see into my property and the private things that I'm busy with. It's a loss of privacy, that's what it is, It's classic overlooking. Yeah, you build a window looking into someone else's bedroom, right? You put a new window in your house and you can see straight into someone else's bedroom. They're going to say, well, you can't do that. That's what it is.
Because it's not a certain size, so therefore the fluid usage. So the courtyard is used not linearly, like a line down the middle. Virtually, people do stuff in different parts. Like a support bubble.
Support bubble. No. No, but that's the point. The point is, if everyone's happy, everyone's happy in living in a block of flats and they all don't care and they all share each other and go in and out of each other's houses, then we don't have to intervene. The halacha is going to intervene when there are problems. As always, we always deal with the problems because that's when it's relevant. So this is. Let's see the Rashi Plugta. I know. Yes. According to this way of learning the Mishnah, I can force you to join with me in building this wall. Yes, because Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. I can say that's. I don't want you to be able to see into my property. Okay. So the Rashi says, the next Rashi is plugta. Rashi says, chalukas chotzer. According to this way of understanding, what does mechitza mean? It means plugta. It means the division of the chotzer. Shehushvu daitum lecholka. They've agreed to divide the chotzer. The scenario has to be where there isn't 8 amos for each of them. Right? Each one cannot force the other to divide it up. They can't force each other to divide it. That they have to agree on because there is not sufficient space for each of them to be able to force the other. There has to be an agreement on the division. Okay, that's a sugya at the end of the parak where basically you have this. The marker is the 8 amos, right? Well, if we each have 8 amos, then I don't even need to ask your permission to divide. Meaning, I can say, right, that's it. I make a unilateral decision that I want to divide the space between us, right? I don't like you seeing into my property anymore. Let's build a wall between us, right? I don't need any agreement because there's 8 amos each is enough to divide, okay? The payment will be shared. That's how we understand it. Pardon? Yeah. If it's kedei, if it is sufficient for each of them, okay, to have the 8 amas each, then one of them can force the other to divide. Yeah, they can force each other to divide. And because we're holding now hezek re'iyah shmei hezek, he's going to be able to come along and say, don't think you can get away with it with just building a little picket fence between us. I can force you in Beis Din to join with me in building something that's permanent, something that's that prevents visibility. Says Rashi, that's why it says they agreed. Once they've agreed to divide the chotzer, because again it's less than 8 amas each, so there has to be agreement on the division. Then they have to build a wall of stones against their will. And if one of them comes along and says, exactly what you're just saying, right? I don't want to spend this money. I don't want it. All I want is, I understand that, I agree with you. I agree with you that it's time that we went our separate ways. And I agree with you that we're going to, that we're not getting on so well anymore. And we each need our own space in this chotzer. But I'm happy with the picket fence. Ein shomen lo. We don't listen to him. Mishum hezek hariyah. Because of the damage the other one's claiming that you can see into my property. Okay? That's how it is. That's how it is. So that's the way we're understanding this now. So we've got these two ways of understanding the Mishnah, which make a huge difference. La halacha. The Gemara says, going with the second pshat, that mechitza means plugta. Ihachi, if so, hai shirotzu lasos mechitza. That when it says they want to build a mechitza, shirotzu lachzos meboile. It should say they want to split up. The words don't fit. Meaning, I understand that you want to say that it's a division, and because you have problems with the other way of learning, with the wall, whatever the questions are. But at the end of the day, the words have to fit. And Gemara says, "Elamai guda." So what? You're going to go back to the other way of learning, and you're going to say, what does it mean? It means the shutfin who want to build a wall. That's also problematic, because the Gemara and the Mishnah says, "You build a wall. You build it." That's what it should say. You build it. Neighbors who want to build a wall, build the wall. Right? Doesn't make sense. Different way. It should say, "Build it." You build it. Okay. So therefore, the Gemara says that's also problematic. So we're stuck. Says the Gemara, Itana Osoi, had it said they build it, Havomin, I would have thought, b'mesipas ba'alma, that it means simply a basic picket fence, komash malon kosel. That's why it has to say the word kosel. That's why the phrase changes and says, if they want to build a wall, they build the wall, meaning it's not something temporary, it is something permanent. It is something permanent, but again, only because they want to do so. Because we're going with the phrase guda, which means hezek re'elav shmei hezek, right? Yeah? This last line is more complicated than it looks. We have to go through the Rashi very carefully on this. Very carefully on this. This Rashi is havmen b'mesipas ba'alma. Says Rashi. And we'll try and recap, but let's just see the Rashi. Havmen b'mesipas ba'alma, I would have thought b'mesipas ba'alma, with a basic picket fence, Maryam Asnisin. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. Because that's also called a fence. Meaning the word mechitza, right? The word mechitza, like we use the word mechitza, like a mechitza in shul, can mean anything, right? It's a division. Even if you learn the word mechitza means a wall, a guda, okay, like the Aramaic word guda, but it doesn't tell you what it's made of. It could be something very flimsy that just functions as a fence. Doesn't tell you anything, right? V'rotzu diktani achalukah koi. And if that's the case, that it's talking about mesippus, it's talking about a mesippus, then v'rotzu diktani, the word rotzu, they want to build it, that will be talking about the chalukah. That will be talking about they want to divide the chotzer up. Okeshe'ein bodin chalukah. And we're talking about where there is no wish, there is no din chalukah, there's no specific halacha which forces division between them, because there's no space for each of them, but they agree to divide it up. As we said, the mechitza means plugta. Okay, because because that's how you'd understand. That's how you'd understand the word rotzu. Meaning, if you learn if you learn that it's talking about a masipah spalma, it's just talking about a flimsy fence, right? A flimsy fence. That's what the word kosel, without the word kosel there. They just build it, something flimsy, okay? If it's talking about something flimsy, then what is the word rotsu talking about? What do they want to do? They want to build a flimsy fence? Doesn't make sense. I mean, the partners who want to build a flimsy fence, they can build a flimsy fence. Doesn't mean that. It's going to mean then you're going to shift back to the other way of learning. You're going to say rotsu means plugta. Rotsu means a division, right? And that's what the Mishnah will be telling you. Rotsu, they want to build they want to divide up the chotzer. Shutfin, who want to divide up the chotzer, what do? They divide it up with anything they want, with something flimsy. So that's how they divide up that's how they can divide up. They divide up the chotzer. Komash malon kosel. That's why it has to say the word wall, specifically a word that there's a fixed permanent wall. V'rotzu diktani mishum kosel. And the word rotzu now is now talking about they have a desire to build a wall, to build a fixed permanent wall, okay? Because that is the fact that the Mishnah has now specified that they are building a wall, something permanent, and not a flimsy fence. If they didn't want to do so, then Palgila b'masippas. They just divided up with a masippas, with a weak and flimsy fence. In other words, the use of the word kosel, the very fact that the Mishnah uses the word kosel, the fact that it uses a wall as opposed to a masippas, right? Or as opposed to an unspecified phrase of any type of fence, that is the indicator, that is the very indicator that we are talking about the desire between them was not about whether or not they divide up the chotzer. That wasn't the point, right? That wasn't the point. The point was that they wanted to build the wall. That was what they were interested in. You with me? They want that is it's like a code, right? The word kosel is in the word wall, meaning a fixed wall, a permanent wall, is inserted in the Mishnah to provide the key for what the issue at stake was. Remember, we've been grappling with these two possible ways of understanding what the desire of these two individuals is. Is their desire to split the land, yeah? Or is their desire to build a wall, right? What's the difference? The difference is whether hezek shmei hezek or lav shmei hezek. Because if their desire is to simply split the property, well, then we're understanding that means they're obligated to do what Chazal tell them to do, because it says bonin asakosa, build a wall, right? Build a wall, yeah. But if the word rotsu doesn't mean that, what does the word rotsu mean? The word rotsu means they want to build a wall, and then we understand it's only because they desire to build a wall. That's why the Chachamim imposed the building of the wall, because they agreed to do it. But if one of them wants, the other one doesn't, nothing to talk about, okay? So the word kosel there, what the Gemara is saying is that the reason why it says the word kosel, a wall, is because that indicates to us that what they want to do here is build a wall. It's not to divide up the chotzer. It is to build the wall, right? It is to build the wall. That's why it says the word kosel. Because had it just said the word osoi, they want to build it, then I would have said, what does it mean? It means something shvach, a basic masipus, something impermanent, something that's not structurally sound. And if that was the case, we'd understand that we're talking again about nothing to do with the wall. We're talking about just dividing up the property between them. And but it's the word kosel which comes to indicate to us, no, we're talking specifically where they agreed to build a wall between them. And it's only because agreement to build a wall, yeah, do they have to go ahead and build a wall. Without that agreement, there's nothing to talk about. Okay? So although this is this last line is a kind of complicated way of saying it, where we end up from the last line of the Gemara, very simply, is that mechitza means a gula, means a wall, right? That's the conclusion of the Gemara at this stage, which means what? Yeah, hezek ria lav shmei hezek. Yeah, that's what it means. It's not considered to be actionable because that's how the Gemara ends up. Yeah. So, unfortunately, though, this is not the conclusion of the Gemara, in the sense that the Gemara is going to have a lishna achrina, another way of learning this whole sugya on the next omud, which will reverse it. And the way we'll actually end up at the end of the whole Gemara is actually learning that hezek ria is considered to be hezek. That's going to be the maskon of the Gemara, that's the conclusion of the Gemara. But at the moment, that's what we are. That's what we're taking on. That's what we're taking on. We're taking on now. Yeah. So, pardon?
2 questions, please.
Yeah.
One is, what's the chiddush in the word mechitza if we're anyway talking about kosel? And the second question is, what's the chiddush of the mission that they've agreed to build a wall? So the mission is telling us they've agreed. What are we learning from that?
Yeah. So the word mechitza is ambiguous, like we're saying, right? You can understand the word mechitza either way in that sense. Yeah. You can understand the word mechitza is not clear whether it means to divide up or whether it means to build a wall as such. Yeah. There are problems with both ways of understanding, right? With both ways of understanding. But the Gemara at this stage is taking on that it is easier to understand the Mishnah with the word gudah, meaning, understand the word mechitza meaning a wall, a gudah, because if you learn the Mishnah that mechitza means a wall, you can justify the use of the word kosel as opposed to osoi, build it, right? You can understand the use of build the wall because what that does is it shows you that that's what we are, that is the point. That is the point we're talking about here. We're talking about them agreeing between them to build a wall. And that answers your second question as well, because your second question is, well, obviously, if 2 people agree to build a wall, obviously they can build a wall. The answer is no. It's only because they both agree to build the wall. That's the chiddush, right? Only because they both agree to build the wall are they put in that position of them needing to share in this construction of this partition which presents visibility between them. But if they didn't both agree, there's no way you can force someone else to do so. And that is the significance of the word. That is the significance of the word kosa. Now sorry, Jeremy, you had a question? Yeah, that's right. Mandating a specific. The wall, the purpose of the wall, according to this way of learning, right? Yeah, the purpose of the wall is to specifically stop someone looking. Is specifically stop someone looking in. That's what. Yeah, exactly. But there's no way you can force someone else to do it, according to what we're saying now, right? Yeah, there's no way you can force someone else to do it, right? Again, that's the key point. Can I force you to build that type of wall or not? That's the question of the Gemara. I mean, Tosfos here has a lot of problems with Rashi. Rashi is it's very difficult to understand why Rashi flips back to the other way of learning. Rashi says that we would have thought we're talking about Mesippus, and if we're talking about Mesippus, the Shvach wall, right, the basic wall, then Rotsu, they want to build the wall, is going on he says goes back to saying about the division, right? It's talking about where they want to divide up, etc., etc. So why does Rashi go back to that? We're not talking about that now. We've already dispensed with, according to this way, we've already dispensed with that. We said the phraseology doesn't work. So why does Rashi go back to that? Tosfos has a more straightforward pshat. Tosfos simply says that I would have said that Rotsu, so if you look at the beginning of this Tosfos Dibra Maskal Hava, right? About halfway down the page, it says like this: Hava Amina b'Mesippus ba'alma Pirush v'Rotsu diktani Mesippus. Rotsu is going on Mesippus. Is going on a weak fence. Right? Hold on a second. Even if they don't agree on that type, a basic wall, they can do even against. He can force the other one. he can force the other one to build the wall. The Gemara will explain that later on. He says that's only a very basic Mesippus. But if they want to, they build a stronger type of Mesippus according to the Minhag HaMedina, made out of whatever materials they do, whatever they want to use. Okay, so that's what you would have thought. You would have thought that that's all you can obligate. That's all that's going on here. Kamash Malon, it comes to tell you, no, that we're going on. The specific interest they have is them both agreeing to build a fixed permanent wall, and that is why they do so. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So therefore, that's where the Gemara's got to. Now we're assuming that Hezekariah you can't make a claim for Hezekariah. The Gemara now says, build a wall in the middle. Pshita, says the Gemara, it's obvious. Obviously, we can build a wall in the middle. Says the Gemara, no, it's necessary to kodim chad v'ratzi lechavre. Right? So what is the Gemara's question? The Gemara's question is that obviously, if we both agree to build a wall, okay, so we've explained that the chiddush of the Mishnah is that Hezekariah lav shmei Hezek, right? That causing damage through seeing into your property is not considered to be damage, right? Thus far we've explained that. But at the end of the day, if people both agree to build a wall, okay, then obviously it's going to be placed in the middle, right? The Mishnah said they build the wall in the middle. Well, obviously they build the wall in the middle, right? Obviously, where else are they going to build a wall? Why should it be on my property? Why on your property? Yeah. But it wouldn't be fair. At the end of the day, we're dividing the property between us. It's a shared courtyard. They're dividing the space equally. Assuming there's a discussion later on about if one property has two doors and one has one door, whether that means he's got more rights to more land or whatever. But let's assume a normal, simple case. We each have a door into the chotzer. Where are you going to divide it? Down the middle. And therefore, obviously, we're both agreeing to build a wall. Obviously, that wall's going to go down the middle, right? Shita says in one. The case is, but one of them went along and appeased the other one. In other words, he went up to him and he convinced the other guy to build a wall. What might you think? He can say to him, he can say to him, when I agreed to you, what did I agree to you? Ba'avira. I agreed to you with the airspace itself, the space itself, right? So, in other words, I agreed a very thin wall that doesn't take up any space on the ground, right? But I didn't agree to you to build a wall that's very thick, which ends up taking up a significant amount of space of my land and reduces the space I've got for the things I want to do. Kamashman, it comes to tell you that that's not the case, and he cannot then come along later and say, hey, I never agreed to that. It's a classic scenario where they both agree, where one neighbor goes up to the other one and says, okay, can I build a wall? And the guy says, sure, you can build a wall. You're paying for it or whatever. Usually, that's not the case. Is it? Sure, you can build a wall. We're agreeing I'm happy with that. And then he turns up the next day and he sees the guy has built a 3-foot thick, concrete edifice. That's what's going on here. So the guy can surround him and say, hold on a minute, I never agreed to that. So that's what we're saying. He can't say that. Obviously, presumably if he's built thicker than the norm, we always go with the Minhag HaMedina. If he's built thicker than the norm accepted practice, then that's out of order. But assuming he's within the norm, then even if it reduces his land a bit, which it will do, then there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, we're going within Minhag HaMedina. But you might think that because one of them had convinced the other one, so you might be able to say to him, hold on a second, I didn't agree that far. The answer is no, he can't say that. That's why he has to tell you. Presumably it's because of Minhag HaMedina. Yeah, presumably because he's still following Minhag HaMedina, and therefore he's got no claim against him. Yeah. Pardon? Presumably will also be follow the guidelines, I would imagine. Let's see Rashi on this. The Rashi Chad Minay Lechavre Bikish Menu Cholkom Mechitza. He asked him to divide it with a mechitza. with a wall. What might you think? What did I agree to? I agreed to a thin mechitza, a thin wall. To reduce the airspace. For example, with beams of wood, which is very thin. The hezek riyah, and that will also reduce the we won't be able to see into each other's land. We're all agreeing to that. Or I was happy with you decided to put the thickness of the wall in your property. All of that's what I agreed to, right? Except for a little bit in mind. But to build a thick wall, so I should lose out my space, my use of the chotzer. I never agreed to anything like that, and that is out of order. And that's why the Mishnah come and tell you, no, you build the wall down the middle. Even in a situation where they both agree to build the wall, it still has to tell me that the parameters of building, you can't come along and say, oh, well, you were the one who suggested it, and I don't agree to all the details. No, it goes down the middle. Okay, right. So, so the Gemara now says, fun. What do you mean not too thick? You said that the whole point, 2 meters wide, and if I got the meter, we need it down the middle. That's what it says, it has to be down the middle, yeah. Yes, but the point is that if the scenario was where one of them approached the other one first and said, I'd like to suggest we build a wall down the middle, and the guy agrees, you might think that he can turn around, the one who agreed, and say, hold on a second, I didn't agree to lose my land over it. I agreed to build a wall, but I wanted you to site that wall entirely in your property, or most of it in your property, or whatever he wants to argue. And that's what we're saying. It's very simple. That's what we're saying. We're simply saying he can't argue that. Okay. Yeah. But the Gemara is now going to ask the hezek, is it true? The Gemara is going to ask now to come on to this point of hezek. We've said that the Mishnah is using the phrase guda, is using the phrase of a wall, and it tells you you build a wall, and the interest, the agreement is on building the wall, and that's the only reason why there is a permanent wall being built, because they both agreed to it. And if they didn't both agree to it, then there would be no way of forcing the other one. And that's because hezek riyah lav shmei hezek. You can't. It's not claimable to say that I don't want you seeing into my property. The Gemara asks, is it really true that hezek riyah lav shmei hezek? Is it really true that hezek riyah is not considered to be damages? The mnemonic here tells you Siman Gino Kosel Kofim Cholkin Chalonus to Rav Nachman. The list of all the proofs we're going to bring for the question of what hezek riyah is. I'm going to go through a bit of this Gemara to get a flavor and understanding, because that will actually help us understand a bit more about what hezek riyah is. Toshma, the first proof, we're going to bring successive proofs that hezek riyah should be a hezek, that I should be able to force you to build a permanent wall once we've agreed to divide the chotzer, because I don't want you looking into my property. Proof number 1. Toshma, the Mishnah says, v'chein begino. We said halfway through the Mishnah, all these things about dividing up, different types of building material. We said the same thing applies with a garden, okay? With a garden. What's the proof from there? Because Tosfos explains this, that basically later on, the Gemara is going to explain that a garden is assumed to be a place where the minhag is, right? Where the minhag is, it's assumed to be a place where there's a minhag to build a wall, right? That's assumed that it's it's called a mokum shenogu ligdar. It's a place where it's assumed that they build walls. No, because I don't want you seeing. Yeah, I don't want you seeing into my garden. So this is if we're understanding that when the Mishnah says v'chein begino, that this also applies to a gino, is not that we both agreed to build a wall in the gino, in a garden, but it's assumed that I can assume and I can tell you that I want to build a wall, right? That's how we're understanding it, because it's a private space. I don't want you looking into my garden. Well, that's a proof that hezek riyah shmei hezek. If that's how we're understanding those words, v'chein begino, well, then there's nothing to talk about. Then obviously here hezek riyah is considered to be damaging, because that's the whole point. Why I'm allowed to do that? So the Gemara says, Gino Shani, a garden is different. You can't make any proofs from a garden, Because when it comes to a garden, could Rabbi Abba, as Rabbi says, a person is not allowed to stand in his friend's field, in time when it's standing in its fully ripened corn or whatever, you're not allowed to stand inside his field at that time. Why? Why? Says Rashi. Look at Rashi halfway down the page. Also, Adam Shiyamu v'chulu shelo yazikenu ba'ayin ra'ah. So he doesn't cause him any damage ba'ayin ra'ah. So that's our second clue as to one type of what hezek re'iyah might be. Ayin hora. That sounds very esoteric, right? But what is ayin hora? What is ayin hora? Good question. Everyone knows better. Who knows what it is? What's the ayin hora here? It's not really so much bad luck. Its idea, simply put, is like drawing attention. It's like drawing attention to his beautiful field and ripened crops. And the concern is that by doing so, that undue attention, that's what Einhora really is, can lead to some negative consequence. Now, we understand Einhora is brought in many different contexts, but there is an understanding that one way of understanding what hezek re'iyah is actually Einhora. It's not that. So this is the second way of looking at it. One way we said is privacy. It's near. Yeah, I don't want you to see what I'm doing privately. Yeah, that's one thing we've said. But this is something else. This is, I don't want you looking at my property doing so well. I don't want you looking at my field producing these beautiful, wonderful crops because you're drawing undue attention. It could cause an Einhora. You're looking at me very, very confused. It's an esoteric concept, right? You've heard of it in other contexts. I mean, this is what is called standing corn? Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be 20 of them.
It's a bit of an odd one, isn't it? To go to court and say, well, I didn't really want to look at my field because of the iron.
Well, not necessarily.
That's not true. All the time. At the end of the day, the whole concept of, the other side of, if you print something in the paper without due course and permission, somebody, you can get, people take out actually superinjunction. The whole point of superinjunction was to stop you from revealing something about me, right? Why do I care? Because it might be embarrassing, it might be affect me in some way. I don't want necessarily, people spend thousands of pounds millions of pounds keeping themselves out of the papers.
Exactly. Meaning, I think your point, David, I just also for the benefit of those on Zoom who may not have heard exactly what the point David was making, is that David was making the point that people take out injunctions, all sorts of things, like, I don't want my name in the papers. Objectively, everyone else could look at that and say, why do you care? I mean, like, it's not a big deal. What is it? It's just one line. It was one line in the mirror. Who cares, right? But the answer is, it doesn't matter. I care. So, meaning, again, we're talking about reasons for it doesn't always have to be. I don't have to justify why it bothers me to you, but if we consider the concept as a legitimate reason to be concerned, then that means that you're damaging me, you're affecting me. So if someone else might say, well, that's not really, I don't think that is Einhora, but he does. Well, it's not a proof as much. This is something. We're conceding the point. That's what we're doing with this, right? We say, how on earth can you say hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek, right? Causing damage through sitting on someone's property is not considered to be hezek, right? We see clearly with a garden that you can make someone else build a fence that makes it invisible, a garden or a field or whatever it's going for. Yeah. The answer is, okay, we'll concede that point. On that, everyone will agree it's considered to be hezek. Because there, the effect of Einhora is very significant, it's serious, and therefore everyone agrees it is actionable in that case. So we've already limited the way we're looking at a hezek, right? So the Gemara says, "V'hova chein kotoni." How can you learn the Mishnah like that it's talking about that scenario, that they're both one reason? In other words, v'chein implies they're both the same reason, the gina and the chotzer, the courtyard and the garden. And now we're saying they're totally different. One is about where there's no claim of hezek re'iyah. There's no way of forcing him to build a wall unless they both agree, because hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek, right? It's only about when they both make a joint decision to build a wall, right? And the garden is something totally different. The garden is because of this whole idea of there's a specific type of ayin hora, right? So the Gemara says, it's going on gvil v'gozis. It's going on gvil v'gozis, which means the types of material that are being used to build the wall. Yeah, the gvil. That's the similarity between them. The truth is that the way I've explained it has left an avenue open to explain the whole concept of hezek re'iyah because of ayin hara. You don't have to learn the Gemara like that. Meaning, there are Rishonim who learn that that's one of the reasons, one of the rationale behind hezek re'iyah is ayin hara. You could learn the Gemara, yeah, as the Gemara is simply saying, with this proof, and the answer to the proof, what we're proving from here, is that one thing has nothing to do with the other. Hezek re'iyah is, I want privacy. Ayin hara is something else. Ayin hara on a garden or a field growing crops is significant to me. And that everyone agrees. It's a different concept, okay? And that would fit actually with what the Gemara says. I had tzvachein, and you're saying something totally different. The answer is no, it's just about the types of building materials you use to build a wall. That's all we're discussing. Yeah. The Gemara is going to go on to bring other proofs to whether or not hezek re'iyah, proving that hezek re'iyah is considered to be hezek. But what I just want to do for just the last few minutes we have is just give you a flavor of what the Rishonim say about the reason behind it. So we've mentioned a bit about it, but the most important point about, and the Acharonim talk about this, Rishonim, about this whole concept, yeah, is the hezek itself direct or indirect? That's the key question, right? Is it direct or indirect? Is it the fact that what we call nizkei gufay, meaning if you see what I'm doing privately, that causes me tsar haguf, that causes me physical pain, it affects the way I function and live my life, it's direct damages, okay? They prove from this Rashi that we saw, but that's how Rashi holds. Because Rashi says, I don't want you to see my private business. Direct physical pain that you're causing me. There's another proof for that from the Ramban. The Ramban is not here. The Ramban is on Daf Nun Tes Amud Aleph. The Ramban says, hezek re'iyah, he says, is nizkei odom ba'odomhu. It is direct damage from one person to another. And this is why it's confusing with ayin hara. He says, imishum ayin ra, either because of ayin hara, imishum lishno bisha, or because of lashon hara, which is quite interesting as well. Meaning, maybe someone, they'll start talking about, because you can see into my property, so you'll start spreading rumors about what I'm doing. You'll start talking about me. That's fun. No. He says, no. He considers this direct damage. Lashon hara can be direct damage, because if you see what I'm doing and you go and tell someone else, let's say I'm designing, Yes, but the lashon, but that doesn't mean the hezek is considered indirect. Yeah, because we'll come back to indirect in a second. Yeah, imishum. Well, but the lashon hara aspect could be, you can. That's what they're grappling with. What exactly is the damage here? The lashon hara is a fascinating one. It seems to mean that I see you developing a new patent device or something like that in your chotzer, you're building something like that, and I go off and do it myself. I learn or do it myself, or I go and report it to someone else, and I cause some damage to you through a lashon hara, what I've seen you're doing. Yeah, we're talking about what you can see. Yeah, but if you can see it, that's the problem. If you can see it, you're going to cause damage. We're not talking about the wall. We're talking about there's no wall. But there's no wall. No, but you can't see if there's no wall. There's no wall, right? There's no wall. Okay, fine, but you can't see him, so it doesn't matter. No, but that's not the damage. That's not causing damage to the Imishum tzniusa. And then he brings the third thing the Ramban says is all because of tzniusa, which is the Rashi, right? Because I just want, you're damaging me because I can't do private things, yeah? Okay, so that's the Ramban. That's the Ramban and Rashi. The second way of looking at it, which is indirect, They paraphrase it here in the Biura here at the back of the Masifta edition. He says, Manias tashmish bilvad. It means, it is damage caused to his property, because he is worried that he will see him. There's a future concern that he might be seen. He will therefore not do private things in the space because he's worried about being seen. And therefore he's damaging the chotzer of his friend. He's reducing the use of the chotzer. It's now making it unusable for private things by the very fact you can see into it. That's not direct damage, right? That is groma. That is groma. That's indirect. That's called groma, and that's still osser. That's still osser, right? It's still not allowed. The difference is that if it's direct damage, then I can make you pay. If it's indirect damage, it may be something you're not allowed to do, but I may not be able to make you pay, right, for causing that damage. This will come and play out in many, many different ways, of course. We might have to come back to this as well. It's just really to introduce the two main ways of looking at Hezekriya. But I will be choosing not to use it because you can see in. That's right. Yeah, but that's still an indirect thing. Yeah, it's exactly. The fact that's right. It's groma in the sense that because of something you do, I make a decision to do something else. But you've indirectly damaged me. That's right. You've indirectly damaged me. But you see why this is difficult. They prove that Rabbeinu Yonah apparently holds like that second way of learning that's indirect. Mitzvah Hashem will come back to it next time, but it's just really to introduce the two ways of understanding Hezekriya. So we'll have a good evening. We'll continue the session next time.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, pleasure.